I'm also working on the phonograph motor itself. I've used some material here. This is a rubber renewal material to attempt renewing the rubber on the wheel here, this rubber wheel, as well as there are some shock absorbing bumpers under here. That's mostly for phonographs so it doesn't skip when something vibrates in the room. So that's going on. This is drying. That'll dry overnight. Again, I'll wipe this down, let that dry overnight, and meanwhile I've got the electronics here, and now the first thing I'll do is clean it up a little bit. Of course it's very dusty. Actually, I've already blown it off with the dust buster thing, and I'm going to recap it. So in other words, I'm going to change the capacitors out in it, as I pointed out before. So that's the next step, and we'll take it from there. Whoa. Well, let's see. It's the next day. Today I'm going to recap this radio, and first thing I've done is I went on the web. Hopefully you can see this. This is a Coronado radio, 1941, but as was typical of the era, some radios were made by other manufacturers. In this case, the manufacturer is actually called Gamble Skogmo. I looked this up in Riders, which is a book that was put out every year that went through each radio and details about it, including its schematic. So this radio, I'm sure you can't see this on the camera, but this is a schematic for this radio, and it gives, you can see down here, this is a parts list. So if there's anything I'm unsure about with the radio, if any of these capacitors that I'm going to replace, if the labeling has gone bad on them, I can check in the schematic and see where they are and what their values are. The other thing these things typically give is a way to, this is going to be really hard to see or impossible, but it tells you an alignment procedure. So that is how to align the radio, meaning that each intermediate frequency transformer, which are these right here, also the variable condenser, which in this radio happens to be underneath, can be adjusted and aligns the radio so that the intermediate frequency of 455 kilohertz is met through the radio. That optimizes the tuning in of the stations and, of course, the sound, the loudness of the sound as well. This one also happens to give you the way that the radio is strung, and that is the way this dial is moved. It's usually through a string device, which it is on this one. Kind of hard to see. I don't think you could see it on the, you wouldn't be able to see it on the camera. So we're going to get started. Okay, we're going to get started with, you can see, actually in this one, for the sake of the video, I'll go a little backwards. Usually I start with the electrolytic capacitor, which I told you is housed over here. But in this particular case, I'm going to give an example of one of the paper capacitors that I'll replace. In this case, what I'll do is just carefully pull this out a little bit, clean it off with my finger, see if I can see what values it is. It turns out this is a 0.1, it says it in here, of course you can't see, but it's a 0.1 microfarad 400 volt DC capacitor. So I'll go over in my box of parts over here, which I keep a box of capacitors for this type of purpose. I have here, this is it's a 0.1 microfarad. As it turns out, it's a 530 volt rated capacitor, which is actually rated higher than the other one. Of course, you can see it looks new. And I will replace this capacitor with this one. And then we'll show you again. Now you can see the capacitor has been replaced. If I zone in on it a little bit there, now that I'm behind the camera, I can see what I'm doing. I replaced that paper non-electrolytic capacitor with this capacitor. You can see, actually used a slightly different one I found in my box, which is rated 630 volts, 104K, which equates to 0.1 microfarad. And then you can see there's another capacitor behind it I'm going to replace. Back off a little bit. One right there I'm going to replace. Two of them there, you can see them. Actually there's three, there's one on the bottom as well. The blue cylindrical device and then the two above it. What else? And that's about it. There's a mica capacitor there, it looks like a square device. The remaining devices are resistors. And they, except for these square and rectangular devices, those are capacitors. But the resistors are usually pretty robust and they last a long time. You don't need to replace them. This is an audio transformer that's inside the radio. Of course, here's a switch. In this particular radio, this switch, it's a radio phonograph. This switch will switch between the radio and the phonograph functions. Okay. What else? Let's see if there's anything else. And of course, underneath all this, you can see these are the base of the tube sockets here. There's one there in the middle. What else to note here? That's about it for now. There's a couple of coils in here. There's one there. It's probably actually this one is probably the oscillator coil. What else? Up here we have the volume control. Another thing I'm going to do with this volume control is I'm going to use some contact cleaner to clean out the volume control. You can see it's pretty dusty on the top. I'm going to get that off and I'm going to clean out the inside of the volume control with contact cleaner. And that's about it. Okay, we're back on again. You can hear the radio working in the background. The radio has been completely recapped. If you look up close, you can see all the new capacitors within. So all the orange ones basically I've replaced. Quite a few of them. I also replaced the electrolytics. You can see those blue cans. And those I will attach, I'll use some, well, I used to call it shoe goo. And I'll use some of that to permanently affix them inside the radio. And let me turn this off for a second. The other thing that I've done is I've used contact cleaner, which, let me back off a little bit here. Now let's see, where's my can of contact cleaner? And of course I can't find it on the camera. Oh, here it is. I use electrical contact cleaner, and I have cleaned out the volume control. And this camera's not cooperating. Sorry, making you dizzy here. I have cleaned out that volume control there. I also cleaned out, there's a switch. I pointed out earlier, it's behind the electrolytic capacitors now. I've cleaned it out with contact cleaner to make sure it operates properly. Also I don't think I talked about this before. The speaker had a couple of minor tears in it, very small, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. Repaired those with Elmer's glue. Just put a tiny dab right along the line where the tear was, let it soak in, let it dry. This radio is almost ready to go. I just got to affix those capacitors, probably let it sit overnight, and then I should be able to put it back in the cabinet when the cabinet's ready, which is not ready yet. Let me show you, let's see if we can do this on the camera. I'll show you the capacitors I replaced. Let's lay them out here. I'll show you why it's important to replace these capacitors. I replaced a whole bunch, you can see. I think that may be all of them. Yes. These are the capacitors I replaced. Of course, they look old, but that's not an indication. But this is one case where you can see this capacitor is actually heated up enough where it started to come out of its casing. In fact, it did come out of its casing. There it is. You can see the foil. It's a foil paper capacitor. This capacitor would have definitely failed, and the radio would have stopped functioning pretty soon. That's a good reason to replace your capacitors. And again, I'm going to affix these capacitors. The electrolytics are just sitting here now inside the very inside edges of the radio. using some of my shoe goo, or it's Liquid Nails makes it now. It's a household adhesive. Very good stuff, and works well inside radios. So with that, we'll sign off for now. We're at the final stage now. Actually, it's been all put back together. You can probably hear the radio running. I've got it turned up. I put 6 coats of polyurethane on it. So looking pretty shiny, and it's pretty little piece. See inside it. Sorry about the glare, but I have the spotlight on. Yeah, just came out pretty well. And then we're going to open it up here. I'm going to make sure this door engages. And we've got the phonograph inside. Put a new tone arm on. And we got to flip the lever here. And the record player is going to start. And then we'll play a record. Skips a little bit. I'm going to have to figure out why. Might be the later angle of the needle. Here we go. We're going to have to give it a little nudge. Of course, it is an pretty old scratched up record, so. Anyway. But actually, the record player works, and it doesn't make too much noise like it did when I first started.
77707-2247 to get your comfort.
Sorry about that.
Comfort247.com.
Radio comes back on.
707. Dickerson.
She can go out there, test the waters,
and there we go.
Talk about the
there
things
we have
that
it.
interest her, and if she decides in the end,
got a radio rebuild. Did some rebuild work on the turntable, and got this thing going. I think the only thing left I'm going to do is probably work on the needle a little bit, and might put another tone arm on there. Might put the original one back because it may work better than this one, and take it from there. So that's about it.